Hey guys, Bob here, and today I'd like to go over the best practices and decisions that you can make throughout Warden of the Coast in order to get the best ending. I'll also be skimming through the regard system and offering a little more insight into how it affects the outcome. I won't be covering every dialogue option that influences regard, for fear of ending up on a milk carton by the time I finish, but I will outline the more significant modifiers. Without further ado, let's delve into something I am terrible at. The ideal ending allows for up to 8 of your companions to survive, but if regard is neglected, there's a good chance this number will end up being a bit lower. Because of that, I want to touch on the regard system real quick before getting into the rest. Regard affects the outcome in a few different ways, but most notably during the convince your companions to stay objective in Hand of Destiny. Here, companions with regard above 14 will stay without any persuasion from the player. Companions with regard above 0 but below 15 will require the proper dialogue choices, whereas companions with regard at or below 0 will leave automatically. Additionally, companions will note the order in which the player speaks to them, losing 1 regard point for every companion that the player speaks to before them. Because of this, the ideal regard level for each companion going into this sequence would be around 24. Although, with the right dialogue choices, you'll be able to get everyone to stay, even if their regard is as low as 10 entering this sequence. Regard is impacted in several ways throughout the questline, including through dialogue choices, witnessing player kills, and the completion of quests. However, the biggest modifier is by completing the companion's loyalty quest, which increases regard by 8. You'll also get a regard increase of 1 for each companion in the player's party at the end of every phase of a loyalty quest. Another way to increase regard is through the companion quarrel dialogue. This is a trade-off, however, as you'll be gaining 4 regard with one companion and losing 4 regard with a different one. However, it can be used to even out regard across your companions when aiming for that sweet target number of 24. Another larger modifier of regard, which is a bit more specific, is giving the correct item during the date quest. With update 1.6, the regard increase has been raised to 4. I think in earlier versions it was around 1 or 2, but that has since been changed. Finally, village contracts offer a small regard increase for all companions in the player's party at the time of their completion. These quests reset every 2 hours and can be completed an infinite number of times. There are a few other large modifiers of regard, but I think they'll fit better in the next section, which is going to be taking a look at the quest line itself. For regard, the first big decision in Bryn's quest is accepting her invitation to fight as her champion. You won't gain as much if you select a champion from your party instead. Another big factor is making sure you don't attack the village outcasts before the proper stage, as this will fail her loyalty quest and negatively impact her regard. The final choice for her loyalty quest is to not turn on her during the final stage of that quest. The correct dialogue options are a bit easier to navigate here than they are for Jade, but if they are missed, the player will be forced to kill her, and her loyalty quest will fail. Hayden's LQ is pretty straightforward for the most part. However, the best decision for regard is to convince him not to go through with memory manipulation. Otherwise, this quest will involve him showing up to a witch's cave and having his memory replaced. If you do end up at the witch's cave, do not interrupt the ceremony, as this will lead to Hayden going insane, failing his loyalty quest, and permanently removing him from your party. For Iriel, killing Krolanak when he first shows up fails her loyalty quest and cuts regard short. Additionally, telling Iriel that she's hopeless has a similar outcome. Killing Krolanak after he teaches Iriel the Thuum to fulfill your part in the agreement, however, does not affect how much regard Iriel gains and still completes her loyalty quest. While it doesn't affect Jade's regard, killing the first 2 distributors while undetected prevents a reputation loss with the local village. This reputation plays a larger role later on when recruiting villagers for the rebellion. Later, when deciding whether to keep Mono talking or to kill him, you will receive more regard if you choose to distract him, assuming, of course, you do so successfully, choosing the established signal after the objective marker appears. Keeping both Jade and Hayden alive during the final phase requires a specific string of dialogue choices. After the distributors are killed, Hayden will confront the player about being there. Lying to him will allow you to keep both companions in your party. Telling him why you're there, however, will result in him presenting an ultimatum for you to choose between him or Jade. Aside from dialogue, the only significant decision throughout Catrie's loyalty quest comes at the final stage, when confronted by Sabrina's ghost. If you choose to listen to Sabrina, you'll have the option to kill Catrie at this stage. However, choosing to defend Catrie allows her to survive beyond her loyalty quest. After Roland visits the crime scene and has a chance to reflect, he will announce that he wants to repent to the Naga. At this point, if his regard is high enough, the player will be able to convince him to investigate the matter further. Otherwise, he will leave and his loyalty quest will fail. I get that this was a little unclear in earlier versions of the mod. However, in 1.6, a regard check notification will appear to indicate why the quest has failed. The regard requirement itself has also been lowered to 5 from earlier versions where it was around 10. Both of these companions are designed as fail-safe characters, in the sense that they cannot be killed during their loyalty quest, unlike Bryn, Hayden, Jade, Catrie, or Roland, but they can be killed off in the 7th main quest, unlike Iriel and Zavik. This is to ensure the player has enough companions for the 7th main quest to function properly. That being said, aside from regard adjustments throughout their dialogue, there aren't any major decisions during their loyalty quests. Zavik is another fail-safe character. However, he remains unkillable for the purpose of the alternate endings rather than the 7th main quest. Dating multiple companions throughout the questline can be beneficial in raising all of their regards. However, it's important not to lead them on too long, as this will result in the most significant regard loss sequence in the mod. As a rule of thumb, you should stop romancing a companion you don't want to commit to around the time the dialogue for "I Want to Talk About Us" shows up, which will occur immediately following the date quest. Progressing beyond this point will result in your companions getting jealous, which is no good for their regard. The first major decision to be made throughout the main quest comes during Hero of the People, when the player must take a side in the village's conflicts. Before committing to a village, it's a good idea to get the opinions of your current party members. Companions who disagree with a decision you're about to make should be swapped with those who don't. Regard will only be modified for companions who are present when the choice is made. Siding with a village in this sequence will raise their approval rating, which comes into play later on. Likewise, siding against a village will lower their approval. However, certain precautions can be taken to dampen the effect, such as remaining undetected while burning down the Elian's walls and while killing the elders of the northern or southern villages. Additionally, you can present Maroon's razor to the elder of the Sotherside village, which will allow you to resolve the conflict without picking a side. In the final update, you're no longer required to choose between defending Norstead or Eliona during Main Quest 5. After talking to the Warden, but before arriving at one of the besieged villages, you can speak to any companion who isn't in your party and send them to defend one of the threatened settlements. This will result in a significant approval increase with both villages. In order to receive the best ending, I recommend saving your companions instead of Sotherside during Main Quest 7. If Sotherside is chosen, 2 random companions, excluding Iriel and Zavik, will die off-screen. Whereas, if you choose to save your companions, 2 of them will be captured, and you'll still have a chance at saving them. To do so will require a high regard with Iriel. After the Warden instructs you to choose between the 2, speak to Iriel before freeing a companion. You'll be able to send her to save one, while you rescue the other. It should be noted that if you ask any other companions to do this, they will both die. In pursuit of the best ending, we won't be joining the Warden, either to prevent or strengthen the Reaping, as both of these choices lead to suboptimal alternate endings. If you lost any companion at all throughout the questline, either Tassius or Tio will ask you to perform a funeral. Telling them to shove it will result in a regard loss. Sometime afterward, Iriel will greet the player expressing her concerns about giving up. Choosing these dialogue options will encourage her to stay. However, after the conversation ends, you'll need to convince the rest of your friends. I covered this briefly at the start of the video, but to add to it, if your romantic partner doesn't hold you in high regard, they'll ask you to leave with them. which will initiate a less desirable alternate ending. If this does occur, however, tell them you won't go with them, and then speak to them later on in the grove, and you'll be able to convince them to rejoin your party. When the companion departure sequence finishes, speak to Zavik. Assuming you've completed his loyalty quest, there will be an option to ask if his unsummon spell can be used to escape oblivion. He'll hint at its possibility, but also that you'll need a powerful being to enhance the spell. From there, go to Vermina's shrine in the cave nearest to Sotherside and ask for her blessing. This will change how the oblivion sequence plays out at the mod's finale. Before initiating the reaping, you'll have the option to recruit villagers to assist in your defense of the island. Much like your companions, it depends largely on your reputation with them. If your street cred is optimal, they'll enlist without any convincing. For medium regard, you'll need to persuade or bribe them, and for low, they will not help you for any reason. You can, at this point, still complete village bounties, which will raise their regard, and then retry to recruit them. Once the elder has decided you can recruit from his village, you'll be able to speak to his villagers individually and assign them to platoons. The number of villagers you can recruit will increase if you choose to construct the sailboat back on the SS deficit. Although it doesn't necessarily affect the narrative, if you have at least 8 companions when you finish preparing for the reaping, they'll all meet up at the dock to stargaze. The dialogue in this scene varies drastically depending on who is still alive at this point. Once your party enters Oblivion for the final push, scenes will play out depending on who in your party is still alive. For example, if Tia is alive, she'll defeat both bodyguards at the entrance. However, if she isn't present, the player will have to kill them instead. Each companion has a similar sequence throughout the charge. The more followers that are present, the more enemies the player will be able to bypass. Once the final bridge is reached, the player will choose 3 companions to go with them. This decision is more important if Vermina has not blessed Zavik's spell, as it will determine who sacrifices themselves by staying back and destroying the sigil stone. To calculate this sacrifice, it will check the player's 3 selected companions and choose one from the priority stack shown here, skipping over the player's love interest if applicable. However, if the spell is blessed, no companion must stay back to remove the stone. This allows all followers except Iriel to survive to the mod's end, and because of this, I consider it to be the best ending. Thanks for watching, and until next time, take care out there.